Chapter 8. India's Great Scientist, J.C. Bose. Jagadish Chandra Bose's wireless inventions antedated those of Marconi. Overhearing this provocative remark, I walked closer to a sidewalk group of professors engaged in scientific discussion. If my motive in joining them was racial pride, I regretted. I cannot deny my keen interest in evidence that India can play a leading part in physics, and not metaphysics alone. "What do you mean, sir?" The professor obligingly explained. Bose was the first one to invent a wireless coherer and an instrument for indicating the refraction of electric waves. But the Indian scientist did not exploit his inventions commercially. He soon turned his attention from the inorganic to the organic world. His revolutionary discoveries as a plant physiologist are outpacing even his radical achievements as a physicist. I politely thanked my mentor. He added, "The great scientist is one of my brother professors at Presidency College." I paid a visit the next day to the sage at his home, which was close to mine. I had long admired him from a respectful distance. The grave and retiring botanist greeted me graciously. He was a handsome, robust man in his 50s, with thick hair, a broad forehead, and the abstracted eyes of a dreamer. The precision in his tones revealed the lifelong scientific habit. "I have recently returned from an expedition to scientific societies of the West. Their members exhibited intense interest in delicate instruments of my invention which demonstrate the indivisible unity of all life. The Bose crescograph has the enormousness of 10 million magnifications. The microscope enlarges only a few thousand times, yet it brought vital impetus to biological science. The crescograph opens incalculable vistas." "You have done much, sir, to hasten the embrace of East and West with the impersonal arms of science." "I was educated at Cambridge. How admirable is the Western method of submitting all theory to scrupulous experimental verification. That empirical procedure has gone hand in hand with the gift for introspection that is my Eastern heritage. Together they have enabled me to sunder the silences of natural realms long uncommunicative. The telltale charts of my crescograph are evidence for the most skeptical that plants have a sensitive nervous system and a varied emotional life. Love, hate, joy, fear, pleasure, pain, excitability, stupor, and countless other appropriate responses to stimuli are as universal in plants as in animals. The unique throb of life in all creation could seem only poetic imagery before your advent, Professor. A saint I once knew would never pluck flowers. Shall I rob the rosebush of its pride in beauty? Shall I affront its dignity by my rude divestment? His sympathetic words are verified literally to your discoveries. The poet is intimate with truth, while the scientist approaches awkwardly. Come some day to my laboratory and see the unequivocal testimony of the crescograph." Gratefully, I accepted the invitation and took my departure. I heard later that the botanist had left Presidency College and was planning a research centre in Calcutta. When the Bose Institute was opened, I attended the dedicatory services. Enthusiastic hundreds strolled over the premises. I was charmed with the artistry and spiritual symbolism of the new home of science. Its front gate is a centuried relic from a distant shrine. Behind a lotus pool, a sculptured female figure with a torch conveys the Indian respect for woman as the immortal light-bearer. A small temple in a garden is consecrated to the noumenon, beyond phenomena. Thought of the divine incorporeity is suggested by the absence of any altar image. Bose's speech on this great occasion might have issued from the lips of one of the inspired ancient rishis. I dedicate today this institute as not merely a laboratory, but a temple. His reverent solemnity stole like an unseen cloak over the crowded auditorium. In the pursuit of my investigations, I was unconsciously led into the border region of physics and physiology. To my amazement, I found boundary lines vanishing and points of contact emerging between the realms of the living and the non-living. Inorganic matter was perceived as anything but inert. It was a thrill under the action of multitudinous forces. A universal reaction seemed to bring metal, plant, and animal under a common law. They all exhibited essentially the same phenomena of fatigue and depression, with possibilities of recovery and of exaltation, as well as the permanent unresponsiveness associated with death. Filled with awe at this stupendous generalization, it was with great hope that I announced my results before the Royal Society, results demonstrated by experiments. But the physiologists present advised me to confine myself to investigations in physics, in which my success had been assured, rather than to encroach on their preserves. I had unwittingly strayed into the domain of an unfamiliar caste system, and had offended its etiquette. An unconscious theological bias was also present, which confounds ignorance with faith. It is often forgotten that He who has surrounded us with this ever-evolving mystery of creation has also implanted in us the desire to question and understand. Through many years of miscomprehension from others, I came to know that the life of a devotee of science is inevitably filled with unending struggle. It is for him to cast his life as an ardent offering, regarding gain and loss, success and failure as one. In time, the leading scientific societies of the world accepted my theories and results and recognized the importance of the Indian contribution to science. Can anything small or circumscribed ever satisfy the mind of India? By a continuous living tradition and a vital power of rejuvenescence, this land has readjusted itself through unnumbered transformations. Indians have always arisen who, discarding the immediate and absorbing prize of the hour, have sought for the realization of the highest ideals in life, not through passive renunciation, but through active struggle. The weakling who has refused the conflict, acquiring nothing, has had nothing to renounce. He alone who has striven and won can enrich the world by bestowing the fruits of his victorious experience. The work already carried out in the Bose laboratory on the response of matter and the unexpected revelations in plant life have opened out very extended regions of inquiry in physics, in physiology, in medicine, in agriculture, and even in psychology. Problems hitherto regarded as insoluble have now been brought within the sphere of experimental investigation. But high success is not to be obtained without rigid exactitude. Hence the long battery of supersensitive instruments and apparatus of my design, which stand before you today in their cases in the entrance hall. They tell you of the protracted efforts to get behind the deceptive seeming into the reality that remains unseen, of the continuous toil and persistence and resourcefulness called forth to overcome human limitations. All creative scientists know that the true laboratory is the mind, where behind illusions they uncover the laws of truth. The lectures given here will not be mere repetitions of second-hand knowledge. They will announce new discoveries demonstrated for the first time in these halls. Through regular publication of the work of the Institute, these Indian contributions will reach the whole world. They will become public property. No patents will ever be taken. The spirit of our national culture demands that we should forever be free from the desecration of utilizing knowledge only for personal gain. It is my further wish that the facilities of this institute be available so far as possible to workers from all countries. In this, I am attempting to carry on the traditions of my country. As far back as 25 centuries, India welcomed to its ancient universities at Nalanda and Taxila scholars from all parts of the world. Although science is neither of the East nor of the West, but rather international in its universality, yet India is specially fitted to make great contributions. The burning Indian imagination, which can extort new order out of a mass of apparently contradictory facts, is held in check by the habit of concentration. This restraint confers the power to hold the mind to the pursuit of truth with an infinite patience. Tears stood in my eyes at the scientist's concluding words. Is patience not indeed a synonym of India, confounding time and the historians alike? I visited the research centre again soon after the day of opening. The great botanist, mindful of his promise, took me to his quiet laboratory. I will attach the crescograph to this fern. The magnification is tremendous. If a snail's crawl were enlarged in the same proportion, the creature would appear to be travelling like an express train. My gaze was fixed eagerly on the screen, which reflected the magnified fern shadow. Minute life movements were now clearly perceptible. The plant was growing very slowly before my fascinated eyes. The scientist touched the tip of the fern with a small metal bar. The developing pantomime came to an abrupt halt, resuming its eloquent rhythms as soon as the rod was withdrawn. You saw how any slight outside interference is detrimental to the sensitive tissues, Bose remarked. Watch, I will now administer chloroform, and then give an antidote. The effect of the chloroform discontinued all growth. The antidote was revivifying. The evolutionary gestures on the screen held me more raptly than a movie plot. My companion, here in the role of villain, thrust the sharp instrument through a part of the fern. Pain was indicated by spasmodic flutters. When he passed a razor partially through the stem, the shadow was violently agitated, then stilled itself with the final punctuation of death. By first chloroforming a huge tree, I achieved a successful transplantation. Usually, such monarchs of the forest die very quickly after being moved. Jagadish smiled happily as he recounted the life-saving maneuver. Grafts of my delicate apparatus have proved that trees possess a circulatory system. Their sap movements correspond to the blood pressure of animal bodies. The ascent of sap is not explicable on the mechanical grounds ordinarily advanced, such as capillary attraction. The phenomenon has been revealed through the crescograph as the activity of living cells. Peristaltic waves issue from a cylindrical tube which extends down a tree and serves as an actual heart. The more deeply we perceive, the more striking becomes the evidence that a uniform plan links every form in manifold nature. The great scientist pointed to another Bose instrument. I will show you experiments on a piece of tin. The life force in metals responds adversely or beneficially to stimuli. Ink markings will register the various reactions. Deeply engrossed, I watched the graph which recorded the characteristic waves of atomic structure. When the professor applied chloroform to the tin, the vibratory writings stopped. They recommenced as the metal slowly regained its normal state. My companion dispensed a poisonous chemical. Simultaneously, with the quivering end of the tin, the needle dramatically wrote on the chart a death notice. The scientist said, Bose instruments have demonstrated that metals, such as the steel used in scissors and machinery, are subject to fatigue and regain efficiency by periodic rest. The life pulse in metals is seriously harmed or even extinguished through the application of electric currents or heavy pressure. I looked around the room at the numerous inventions, eloquent testimony of a tireless ingenuity. Sir, it is lamentable that mass agricultural development is not speeded by a fuller use of your marvellous mechanisms. Would it not be easily possible to employ some of them in quick laboratory experiments to indicate the influence of various types of fertilizers on plant growth? You are right, Countless uses of Bose instruments will be made by future generations. The scientist seldom knows contemporaneous reward. It is enough to possess the joy of creative service. With expressions of unreserved gratitude to the indefatigable sage, I took my leave. Can the astonishing fertility of his genius ever be exhausted, I thought. No diminution came with the years. Inventing an intricate instrument, the resonant cardiograph, Bose then pursued extensive researches on innumerable Indian plants. An enormous unsuspected pharmacopoeia of useful drugs was revealed. The cardiograph is constructed with unerring accuracy by which a 100th part of a second is indicated on a graph. Resonant records measure infinitesimal pulsations in plant, animal and human structure. The great botanist predicted that use of his cardiograph will lead to vivisection on plants instead of animals. Side-by-side recordings of the effects of a medicine given simultaneously to a plant and an animal have shown astounding unanimity in result, he pointed out. Everything in man has been foreshadowed in the plant. Experimentation on vegetation will contribute to the lessening of animal and human suffering. Years later, Bose's pioneer plant findings were substantiated by other scientists. Work done in 1938 at Columbia University was reported by the New York Times as follows. It has been determined within the past few years that when the nerves transmit messages between the brain and other parts of the body, tiny electrical impulses are being generated. These impulses have been measured by delicate galvanometers and magnified millions of times by modern amplifying apparatus. Until now, no satisfactory method has been found to study the passage of the impulses along the nerve fibers in living animals or man because of the great speed with which these impulses travel. Doctors K.S. Cole and H.J. Curtis reported having discovered that the long, single cells of the freshwater plant Nitella, used frequently in goldfish bowls, are virtually identical with those of single nerve fibers. Furthermore, they found that Nitella fibers, on being excited, propagate electrical waves that are similar in every way, except velocity, to those of the nerve fibers in animals and man. The electrical nerve impulses in the plant were found to be much slower than those in animals. This discovery was therefore seized upon by the Columbia workers as a means for taking slow-motion pictures of the passage of the electrical impulses in nerves. The Nitella plant thus may become a sort of Rosetta Stone for deciphering the closely guarded secrets close to the very borderland of mind and matter. The poet Rabindranath Tagore was a stalwart friend of India's idealistic scientist. To him, the sweet Bengali singer addressed the following lines. O hermit, call thou, in the authentic words of that old hymn called Sama, rise, awake, call to the man who boasts his shastric lore, from vain pedantic wranglings, profitless, call to that foolish braggart to come forth, out on the face of nature, this broad earth, send forth this call unto thy scholar band. Together, round thy sacrifice of fire, let them all gather. So may our India, our ancient land, unto herself return, oh, once again return to steadfast work, to duty and devotion, to her trance of earnest meditation. Let her sit once more, unruffled, greedless, strifeless, pure. Oh, once again, upon her lofty seat and platform, teacher of all lands. Chapter 9. The Blissful Devotee and His Cosmic Romance. Little sir, please be seated. I am talking to my Divine Mother. Silently, I had entered the room in great awe. The angelic appearance of Master Mahashaya fairly dazzled me. With silky white beard and large lustrous eyes, he seemed an incarnation of purity. His upraised chin and folded hands apprised me that my first visit had disturbed him in the midst of his devotions. His simple words of greeting produced the most violent effect my nature had so far experienced. The bitterness of separation at my mother's death I had thought the measure of all anguish. Now a consciousness of separation from my divine mother was an indescribable torture of the spirit. I fell moaning to the floor. "Little sir, quiet yourself." The saint was sympathetically distressed. Abandoned in some oceanic desolation, I clutched his feet as the sole raft of my rescue. "Holy Sir, thine intercession, ask Divine Mother if I find any favour in her sight." The sacred promise of intercession is one not easily bestowed. The Master was constrained to silence. Beyond reach of doubt, I was convinced that Master Mahashaya was in intimate converse with the Universal Mother. It was deep humiliation to realize that my eyes were blind to her, who even at this moment was perceptible to the faultless gaze of the saint. Shamelessly gripping his feet, deaf to his gentle remonstrances, I besought him again and again for his intervening grace. "I will make your plea to the beloved." The Master's capitulation came with a slow, compassionate smile. What power in those few words, that my being should now release from its stormy exile. "Sir, remember your pledge. I shall return soon for her message." Joyful anticipation rang in my voice, which only a moment ago had been sobbingly choked with sorrow. Descending the long stairway, I was overwhelmed by memories. This house, in Calcutta, at 50 Amherst Street, now the residence of Master Mahashaya, had once been my family home, the scene of my mother's death. Here my human heart had broken for the vanished mother, and here, today, my spirit had been as though crucified by the absence of the Divine Mother. Hallowed walls, silent witness of my grievous hurts and final healing. My steps were eager as I returned to my home. Seeking the seclusion of my small attic, I remained in meditation until 10 o'clock. The darkness of the warm Indian night was suddenly lit with a wondrous vision. Hallowed in splendor, the Divine Mother stood before me. Her face, tenderly smiling, was beauty itself. "Always have I loved thee, ever shall I love thee." The celestial tones still ringing in the air, she disappeared. The sun on the following morning had hardly risen to an angle of decorum when I paid my second visit to Master Mahashaya. Climbing the staircase in the house of poignant memories, I reached his 4th-floor room. The knob of the closed door was wrapped around with a cloth, a hint, I felt, that the saint desired privacy. As I stood irresolutely on the landing, the door was opened by the Master's welcoming hand. I knelt at his holy feet. In a playful mood, I wore a solemn mask over my face, hiding the divine elation. "Sir, I have come, very early, I confess, for your message. Did the beloved mother say anything about me?" "Mischievous little sir." Not another remark would he make. Apparently my assumed gravity was unimpressive. Why so mysterious? So evasive? Do saints never speak plainly? Perhaps I was a little provoked. "Must you test me?" His calm eyes were full of understanding. "Might I add a single word this morning to the assurance you received last night at 10 o'clock from the beautiful mother herself?" Master Mahashaya possessed control over the floodgates of my soul. Again I plunged prostrate at his feet. But this time my tears welled from a bliss and not a pain, past bearing. "Think you that your devotion did not touch the infinite mercy? The motherhood of God, which you have worshipped in forms both human and divine, could never fail to answer your forsaken cry." Who was this simple saint, whose least request to the universal spirit met with sweet acquiescence? His role in the world was humble, as befitted the greatest man of humility I ever knew. In this Amherst Street house, Master Mahasaya conducted a small high school for boys. No words of chastisement passed his lips. No rule and ferule maintained his discipline. Higher mathematics indeed was taught in these modest classrooms, and a chemistry of love absent from the textbooks. He spread his wisdom by spiritual contagion rather than by impermeable precept. Consumed by an unsophisticated passion for the Divine Mother, the saint no more demanded the outward forms of respect than a child. "I am not your guru. He shall come a little later," he told me. "Through his guidance, your experiences of the divine in terms of love and devotion will be translated into his terms of fathomless wisdom." Every late afternoon, I betook myself to Amherst Street. I sought Master Mahasaya's divine cup, so full that its drops daily overflowed on my being. Never before had I bowed in utter reverence. Now I felt it an immeasurable privilege, even to tread the same ground that Master Mahasaya's footsteps sanctified. "Sir, please wear this champak garland I have fashioned especially for you." I arrived one evening holding my chain of flowers, but shyly he drew away, repeatedly refusing the honour. Perceiving my hurt, he finally smiled consent. "Since we are both devotees of the Mother, you may put the garland on this bodily temple as offering to her who dwells within." His vast nature lacked space in which any egotistical consideration could gain foothold. "Let us go tomorrow to Dakshineswar, to the temple of Kali, forever hallowed by my Guru." The saint was a disciple of a Christ-like master, Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa. The 4-mile journey on the following morning was taken by boat on the Ganges. We entered the 9-domed temple of Kali, where the figures of the Divine Mother and Shiva rest on a burnished silver lotus, its 1,000 petals meticulously chiselled. Master Mahasaya beamed in enchantment. He was engaged in his inexhaustible romance with the beloved. As he chanted her name, my enraptured heart seemed shattered like the lotus into 1,000 pieces. We strolled later through the sacred precincts, halting in a tamarisk grove. The manner characteristically exuded by this tree was symbolic of the heavenly food Master Mahasaya was bestowing. His divine invocations continued. I sat rigidly motionless on the grass amid the pink feathery tamarisk flowers. Temporarily absent from the body, I soared in a supernal visit. This was the first of many pilgrimages to Dakshineswar with the holy teacher. From him I learned the sweetness of God in the aspect of Mother, or divine mercy. The childlike saint found little appeal in the father aspect or divine justice. Stern, exacting, mathematical judgment was alien to his gentle nature. He can serve as an earthly prototype for the very angels of heaven, I thought fondly, watching him one day at his prayers. Without a breath of censure or criticism, he surveyed the world with eyes long familiar with the primal purity. His body, mind, speech, and actions were effortlessly harmonized with his soul's simplicity. My master told me so. Shrinking from personal assertion, the saint usually ended his sage counsel with this tribute. So deep was his sense of identity with Sri Ramakrishna that Master Mahasaya no longer considered his thoughts to be his own. Hand in hand, the saint and I walked one evening on the block of his school. My joy was dimmed by the arrival of a conceited acquaintance. He burdened us with a lengthy discourse. "I see this man doesn't please you." The saint's whisper to me was unheard by the egotist, spellbound by his own monologue. "I have spoken to Divine Mother about it. She realizes our sad predicament. As soon as we get to yonder red house, she has promised to remind him of more urgent business." My eyes were glued to the sight of salvation. Reaching its red gate, the man unaccountably turned and departed, neither finishing his sentence nor saying goodbye. Peace descended on the assaulted air. Another day found me walking alone near the Harwa railway station. I stood for a moment by a temple, silently criticizing a small group of men with drums and cymbals who were violently reciting a chant. How undevotionally they use the Lord's divine name in mechanical repetition, I reflected. Suddenly I was astonished to see Master Mahashaya rapidly approaching me. "Sir, how come you here?" The saint, ignoring my question, answered my thought. "Isn't it true, little sir, that the beloved's name sounds sweet from all lips, ignorant or wise?" He passed his arm around me affectionately. I found myself carried on his magic carpet to the merciful presence. "Would you like to see some bioscopes?" This question one afternoon from the reclusive Master Mahashaya was mystifying to me. The term was then used in India to signify motion pictures. I agreed, glad to be in his company in any circumstances. A brisk walk brought us to the garden fronting Calcutta University. My companion indicated a bench near the Goldigi or pond. "Let us sit here for a few minutes." My master asked me to meditate whenever I saw an expanse of water. Here, its placidity reminds us of the vast calmness of God. As all things can be reflected in water, so the whole universe is mirrored in the lake of the cosmic mind. So my Gurudeva often said. Soon we entered a university hall where a lecture was in progress. It proved abysmally dull, though varied occasionally by lantern-slide illustrations equally uninteresting. So this is the kind of bioscope the master wanted me to see. My thought was impatient, yet I would not hurt the saint by revealing boredom in my face. But he leaned towards me confidentially. "I see, little sir, that you don't like this bioscope. I have mentioned it to Divine Mother. She is in full sympathy with us both. She tells me that the electric lights will now go out and won't be relit until we have a chance to leave the room." As his whisper ended, the hall was plunged into darkness. The professor, whose strident voice had been stilled for a moment in astonishment, said, "The electrical system of this hall appears to be defective." By this time, Master Mahashaya and I were already across the threshold. Glancing back from the corridor, I saw that the hall was again illuminated. "Little sir, you were disappointed in that bioscope, but I think you will like a different one." The saint and I were standing on the sidewalk in front of the university building. He gently slapped my chest over the heart. A transforming silence ensued. Just as the modern talkies become inaudible motion pictures when the sound apparatus goes out of order, so the divine hand, by some strange miracle, stifled the earthly bustle. Pedestrians, as well as the passing trolley cars, automobiles, bullock carts, and iron-wheeled hackney carriages, were all in noiseless transit. As though possessing an omnipresent eye, I beheld the scenes that were behind me and to each side as easily as those in front. The whole spectacle of activity in that small section of Calcutta passed before me without a sound. Like a glow of fire dimly seen beneath a thin coat of ashes, a mellow luminescence permeated the panoramic view. My own body seemed nothing more than one of the many shadows, though it was motionless, while the others flitted mutely to and fro. Several boys, friends of mine, approached and passed on. Though they had looked directly at me, it was without recognition. The unique pantomime brought me an inexpressible ecstasy. I drank deep from some blissful fount. Suddenly my chest received another soft blow from Master Mahashaya. The pandemonium of the world burst upon my unwilling ears. I staggered, as though harshly awakened from a gossamer dream. The transcendental wine was removed beyond my reach. "Little sir, I see you found the second bioscope to your liking." The saint was smiling. I started to kneel in gratitude on the ground before him. "You can't do that to me now," he said. "You know God is in your temple also. I won't let Divine Mother touch my feet through your hands." If anyone observed the unpretentious master and me as we slowly walked away from the crowded pavement, the onlooker surely suspected us of intoxication. I felt that the falling shades of evening were sympathetically drunk with God. Trying with poor words to do justice to his benignity, I wondered if Master Mahashaya and others among the saints whose paths crossed mine knew that years later, in a Western land, I would be writing about their lives as divine devotees. Their foreknowledge would not surprise me, nor I hope my readers, who have come thus far with me. Saints of all religions have attained God realization through the simple concept of the cosmic beloved. Because the Absolute is nirguna, without qualities, and asintya, inconceivable, human thought and yearning have ever personalized it as the universal mother. A combination of personal theism and the philosophy of the Absolute is an ancient achievement of Hindu thought, expounded in the Vedas and the Bhagavad Gita. This reconciliation of opposites satisfies heart and head. Bhakti, devotion, and jnana, wisdom, are essentially one. Prapati, taking refuge in God, and Sharanagati, flinging oneself on the divine compassion, are really paths of the highest knowledge. The humility of Master Mahashai and of all other saints springs from a recognition of their total dependence, Seshatva, on the Lord as the sole life and judge. Because the very nature of God is bliss, the man in attunement with Him experiences a native boundless joy. The first of the passions of the soul and the will is joy. Devotees of all the ages approaching the Mother in a childlike spirit testify that they find her ever at play with them. In Master Mahashai's life, the manifestations of divine play occurred on occasions important and unimportant. In God's eyes, nothing is large or small. Were it not for His perfect nicety in constructing the tiny atom, could the skies wear the proud structures of Vega, Arcturus? Distinctions of important and unimportant are surely unknown to the Lord, lest, for want of a pin, the cosmos collapse. Chapter 10. I Meet My Master, Sri Yukteswar. Faith in God can produce any miracle, except one: passing an examination without study. Distastefully, I closed the inspirational book I had picked up in an idle moment. The writer's exception shows his complete lack of faith, I thought. Poor chap, he has great respect for the midnight oil. My promise to father had been that I would complete my high school studies. I cannot pretend to diligence. The passing months found me less frequently in the classroom than in secluded spots along the Calcutta bathing ghats. The adjoining crematory grounds, especially gruesome at night, are considered highly attractive by the yogi. He who would find the deathless essence must not be dismayed by a few unadorned skulls. Human inadequacy becomes clear in the gloomy abode of miscellaneous bones. My midnight vigils were thus of a different nature from the scholars. The week of final examinations at the Hindu high school was fast approaching. This interrogatory period, like the sepulchral haunts, inspires a well-known terror. My mind was nevertheless at peace. Braving the ghouls, I was exhuming a knowledge not found in lecture halls. But I lacked the art of Swami Pranabananda, who easily appeared in two places at one time. My reasoning, though to many, alas, it seems illogic, was that the Lord would notice my dilemma and would extricate me from it. The devotee's irrationality springs from 1,000 inexplicable demonstrations of God's instancy in trouble. "Hello, Mukunda, I catch hardly a glimpse of you these days." A classmate accosted me one afternoon on Garpa Road. "Hello, Nantu. My invisibility at school seems to have placed me there in a decidedly awkward position." I unburdened myself under his friendly gaze. Nantu, who was a brilliant student, laughed heartily. My predicament was not without a comic aspect. "You are utterly unprepared for the finals," he said. "I suppose it's up to me to help you." The simple words conveyed divine promise to my ears. With alacrity, I visited my friend's home. He kindly outlined the solutions to various problems he considered likely to be set by the instructors. "These questions are the bait that will catch many trusting boys in the examination trap. Remember my answers, and you will escape without injury." The night was far gone when I departed. Bursting with unseasoned erudition, I devoutly prayed it would remain for the next few critical days. Nantu had coached me in my various subjects, but under press of time had forgotten my course in Sanskrit. Fervently, I reminded God of the oversight. I set out for a walk the next morning, assimilating my new knowledge to the rhythm of swinging footsteps. As I took a shortcut through the weeds of a corner lot, my eye fell on a few loose printed sheets. A triumphant pounce. In my hand were Sanskrit verses. I sought out a pundit for aid in my stumbling interpretation. His rich voice filled the air with the edgeless, honeyed beauty of the ancient tongue. "These exceptional stanzas cannot possibly be of aid in your Sanskrit test." The scholar dismissed them skeptically. But familiarity with that particular poem enabled me on the following day to pass the Sanskrit examination. Through the discerning help Nantu had given, I also attained the minimum grade for success in all my other subjects. Father was pleased that I had kept my word and concluded my secondary school course. My gratitude sped to the Lord, whose sole guidance I perceived in my visit to Nantu's home and in my walk by the unhabitual route of the debris-filled lot. Playfully, he had given a dual expression to his timely design for my rescue. I came across the discarded book, whose author had denied God precedence in the examination halls. I could not restrain a chuckle at my own silent comment. It would only add to this fellow's confusion if I were to tell him that divine meditation among the cadavers is a shortcut to a high school diploma. In my new dignity, I was now openly planning to leave home. Together with a young friend, Jitendra Mazumdar, I decided to join a Banaras hermitage, Sri Bharat Dharma Mahamandal, and receive its spiritual discipline. A desolation fell over me one day at the thought of separation from my family. Since mother's death, my affection had grown especially tender for my two younger brothers, Sananda and Bishnu, and for Tamu, my youngest sister. I rushed to my retreat, the little attic that had witnessed so many scenes in my turbulent sadhana. After a 2-hour flood of tears, I felt singularly transformed, as by some alchemical cleanser. All attachment disappeared. My resolution to seek God as the friend of friends became adamantine. I make one last plea. Father was distressed as I stood before him for his blessing. Do not forsake me and your grieving brothers and sisters. Revered Father, how can I tell my love for you? But even greater is my love for the Heavenly Father, who has given me the gift of a perfect Father on earth. Let me go, that I someday return with a more divine understanding. With reluctant parental consent, I set out to join Jitendra, already in Banaras at the hermitage. On my arrival, the young head Swami, Dayananda, greeted me cordially. Tall and thin, of thoughtful mien, he impressed me favourably. His fair face had a Buddha-like composure. I was pleased that my new home possessed an attic where I managed to spend the dawn and morning hours. The ashram members, knowing little of meditation practices, thought I should employ my whole time in organizational duties. They gave me praise for my afternoon work in their office. Don't try to catch God so soon. This ridicule from a fellow resident accompanied one of my early departures towards the attic. I went to Dayananda, busy in his small sanctum overlooking the Ganges. Swamiji, I don't understand what is required of me here. I am seeking direct perception of God. Without him, I cannot be satisfied with affiliation or creed or performance of good works. The orange-robed ecclesiastic gave me an affectionate pat. Staging a mock rebuke, he admonished a few nearby disciples. Don't bother Mukunda. He will learn our ways. I politely concealed my doubt. The students left the room, not noticeably bent with their chastisement. Dayananda had further words for me. Mukunda, I see that your father is regularly sending you money. Please return it to him. You require none here. A second injunction for your discipline concerns food. Even when you feel hunger, do not mention it. Whether famishment gleamed in my eye, I know not. That I was hungry, I knew only too well. The invariable hour for the first hermitage meal was 12 noon. I had been accustomed in my own home to a large breakfast at 9 o'clock. A 3-hour gap became daily more interminable. Gone were the Calcutta years where I could rebuke the cook for a 10-minute delay. Now I tried to control my appetite. I completed a 24-hour fast. With double zest, I awaited the following midday. Dayanandaji's train is late. We're not going to eat until he arrives. Jitendra brought me this devastating news. As a gesture of welcome to the Swami, who had been absent for 2 weeks, many delicacies were in readiness. An appetizing aroma filled the air, nothing else offering what could be swallowed except my pride in yesterday's fast. Lord, hasten the train. The heavenly provider, I thought, could hardly have been included in the interdiction with which Dayananda had silenced me. Divine attention was elsewhere, however. The plodding clock covered the hours. Darkness was descending as our leader entered the door. My greeting was one of sheer joy. Dayanandaji will bathe and meditate before we can serve food. Jitendra approached me again as a bird of ill omen. I was near collapse. My young stomach, new to deprivation, protested with gnawing vigour. Pictures I had seen of famine victims passed wraith-like before me. The next Benares death from starvation is due at once in this hermitage, I thought. Impending doom was averted at 9 o'clock. Ambrosial summons. In memory, that evening meal is vivid as one of life's perfect hours. Intense absorption had not prevented me from observing that Dayananda ate absent-mindedly. He was apparently above my gross pleasures. Swamiji, weren't you hungry? Happily surfeited, I was alone with the leader in his study. Oh, yes, he said. I spent the last 4 days without food or drink. I never eat on trains, filled with the heterogeneous vibrations of worldly people. Strictly, I observe the Shastric rules for monks of my particular order. Certain problems of our organizational work lie on my mind. Tonight at home I neglected my dinner. What's the hurry? Tomorrow I'll make it a point to have a proper meal. He laughed merrily. Shame spread within me like a suffocation, but the past day of my torture was not easily forgotten. I ventured a further remark. Swamiji, I am puzzled about following your instruction. Suppose I never ask for food and nobody gives me any. I should starve to death. Die then. This alarming counsel split the air. Die, if you must, Mukunda. Never believe that you live by the power of food and not by the power of God. He who has created every form of nourishment, he who has bestowed appetite, will inevitably see that his devotee is maintained. Do not imagine that rice sustains you, nor that money or men support you. Could they aid if the Lord withdraws your life breath? They are his instruments merely. Is it by any skill of yours that food digests in your stomach? Use the sword of your discrimination, Mukunda. Cut through the chains of agency and perceive the single cause. I found his incisive words entering some deep marrow. Gone was an age-old delusion by which bodily imperatives outwit the soul. Then and there I tasted the Spirit's all-sufficiency. In how many strange cities in my later life of ceaseless travel did occasion arise to prove the serviceability of this lesson in a Benares hermitage. The sole treasure which had accompanied me from Calcutta was the sadhu's silver amulet, bequeathed to me by mother. Guarding it for years, I now had it carefully hidden in my ashram room. To renew my joy in the talismanic testimony, one morning I opened the locked box, the sealed covering untouched. Lo, the amulet was gone. Mournfully I tore open the envelope, and made unmistakably sure it had vanished, in accordance with the sadhu's prediction, into the ether whence he had summoned it. My relationship with Dayananda's followers grew steadily worse. The household was alienated, hurt by my determined aloofness. My strict adherence to meditation on the very ideal for which I had left home and all worldly ambitions called forth shallow criticism from all sides. Torn by spiritual anguish, I entered the attic one dawn, resolved to pray until an answer was vouchsafed. Merciful Mother of the universe, teach me thyself through visions, or through a guru sent by thee. The passing hours found my sobbing pleas without response. Suddenly, I felt lifted, as though bodily, to a sphere uncircumscribed. Thy master cometh today. A divine womanly voice came from everywhere and nowhere. The supernal experience was shattered by a shout from a definite locale. A young priest, nicknamed Habu, was calling me from the downstairs kitchen. Mukunda, enough of meditation, you're needed for an errand. Another day I might have replied impatiently. Now I wiped my tear-swollen face and meekly obeyed the summons. Together, Habu and I set out for a distant marketplace in the Bengali section of Benares. The ungentle Indian sun was not yet at zenith as we made our purchases in the bazaars. We pushed our way through the colourful medley of housewives, guides, priests, simply clad widows, dignified Brahmins, and ubiquitous holy bulls. As Habu and I moved on, I turned my head to survey a narrow, inconspicuous lane. A Christ-like man, in the ochre robes of a Swami, stood motionless at the end of the lane. Instantly and anciently familiar he seemed. For a trice my gaze fed hungrily, then doubt assailed me. You are confusing this wandering monk with someone known to you, I thought. Dreamer. Walk on. After 10 minutes, I felt heavy numbness in my feet. As though turned to stone, they were unable to carry me farther. Laboriously I turned around. My feet regained normality. I faced the opposite direction. Again, the curious weight oppressed me. The saint is magnetically drawing me to him. With this thought, I heaped my parcels into the arms of Habu. He had been observing my erratic footwork with amazement, and now burst into laughter. What ails you? Are you crazy? My tumultuous emotion prevented any retort. I sped silently away. Retracing my steps as though wing-shod, I reached the narrow lane. My quick glance revealed the quiet figure, steadily gazing in my direction. A few eager steps, and I was at his feet. Guru Deva. The divine face was the one I had seen in 1,000 visions. These halcyon eyes, in a leonine head, with pointed beard and flowing locks, had oft peered through the gloom of my nocturnal reveries, holding a promise I had not fully understood. Oh, my own, you have come to me. My guru uttered the words again and again in Bengali, his voice tremulous with joy. How many years have I waited for you? We entered a oneness of silence. Words seemed the rankest superfluities. Eloquence flowed in soundless chant from the heart of master to disciple. With an antenna of irrefragable insight, I sensed that my guru knew God and would lead me to him. The obscuration of this life disappeared in a fragile dawn of prenatal memories. Dramatic time, past, present, and future, are its cycling scenes. This was not the first sun to find me at these holy feet. My hand in his, my guru led me to his temporary residence in the Rana Mahal section of the city. His athletic figure moved with firm tread. Tall, erect, about 55 at this time, he was active and vigorous as a young man. His dark eyes were large, beautiful with plumbless wisdom. Slightly curly hair softened a face of striking power. Strength mingled subtly with gentleness. As we made our way to the stone balcony of a house overlooking the Ganges, he said affectionately, "I shall give you my hermitages, and all I possess. Sir, I come for wisdom and God-realization. Those are your treasure troves I am after." The swift Indian twilight had dropped its half-curtain before my master spoke again. His eyes held unfathomable tenderness. "I give you my unconditional love." Precious words. A quarter-century elapsed before I had another auricular proof of his love. His lips were strange to ardour. Silence suited his oceanic heart. "Will you give me the same unconditional love?" He gazed at me with childlike trust. "I will love you eternally, Gurudeva." Ordinary love is selfish, darkly rooted in desires and satisfactions. Divine love is without condition, without boundary, without change. The flux of the human heart is gone forever at the transfixing touch of pure love. He added humbly, "If you ever find me falling from a state of God-realization, please promise to put my head on your lap and help to bring me back to the cosmic beloved we both worship." He rose then in the gathering darkness and guided me to an inner room. As we ate mangoes and almond sweetmeats, he unobtrusively wove into his conversation an intimate knowledge of my nature. I was awestruck at the grandeur of his wisdom, exquisitely blended with an innate humility. "Do not grieve for your amulet. It has served its purpose." Like a divine mirror, my Guru apparently had caught a reflection of my whole life. "The living reality of your presence, Master, is joy beyond any symbol. It is time for a change, inasmuch as you are unhappily situated in the hermitage." I had made no references to my life. They now seemed superfluous. By his natural, unemphatic manner, I understood that he wished no astonished ejaculations at his clairvoyance. "You should go back to Calcutta? Why exclude relatives from your love of humanity?" His suggestion dismayed me. My family was predicting my return, though I had been unresponsive to many pleas by letter. "Let the young bird fly in the metaphysical skies," Ananta had remarked. "His wings will tire in the heavy atmosphere. We shall yet see him swoop toward home, fold his pinions, and humbly rest in our family nest." This discouraging simile fresh in my mind, I was determined to do no swooping in the direction of Calcutta. "Sir, I am not returning home, but I will follow you anywhere. Please give me your address and your name." "Swami Sri Yukteswar Giri. My chief hermitage is in Serampore, on Rai Ghat Lane. I am visiting my mother here for only a few days." I wondered at God's intricate play with his devotees. Serampore is but 12 miles from Calcutta. Yet in those regions I had never caught a glimpse of my Guru. We had had to travel for our meeting to the ancient city of Kashi, Benares, hallowed by memories of Lahiri Mahashai. Here too the feet of Buddha, Shankaracharya, and many other yogi Christs had blessed the soil. "You will come to me in 4 weeks." For the first time, Sri Yukteswar's voice was stern. "Now that I have told you of my eternal affection, and have shown my happiness at finding you, you feel free to disregard my request. The next time we meet, you shall have to reawaken my interest. I won't easily accept you as a disciple. There must be complete surrender by obedience to my strict training." I remained obstinately silent. My guru quickly penetrated my difficulty. "Do you think your relatives will laugh at you?" "I will not return." "You will return. In 30 days. Never." The controversial tension unrelieved, I bowed reverently at his feet and departed. Walking in the midnight darkness towards the hermitage, I wondered why the miraculous meeting had ended on an inharmonious note. The dual scales of Maya that balance every joy with a grief. My young heart was not yet malleable to the transforming fingers of my guru. The next morning, I noticed increased hostility in the attitude of the hermitage members. They spiked my days with invariable rudeness. 3 weeks passed. Dayananda then left the ashram to attend a conference in Bombay. Pandemonium broke over my hapless head. Mukunda is a parasite, accepting hermitage hospitality without making proper return. Overhearing this remark, I regretted for the first time that I had obeyed the request to send back my money to father. With a heavy heart, I sought out my sole friend, Jitendra. "I'm leaving. Please convey my respectful regrets to Dayananda-ji when he returns. I will leave also. My attempts to meditate here meet with no more favour than your own." Jitendra spoke with determination. "I have met a Christ-like saint. Let us visit him in Serampore." And so the bird prepared to swoop perilously close to Calcutta. Chapter 11. 2 Penniless Boys in Brindaban. "It would serve you right if father disinherited you, Mukunda. How foolishly you're throwing away your life." An elder brother's sermon was assaulting my ears. Jitendra and I, fresh from the train, a figure of speech merely, we were covered with dust, had just arrived at the home of Ananta, recently transferred from Calcutta to the ancient city of Agra. Brother was a supervising accountant for the Public Works Department of the government. "You well know, Ananta, I seek my inheritance from the Heavenly Father. Money first. God can come later. Who knows? Life may be too long. God first. Money is his slave. Who can tell? Life may be too short." My retort was summoned by the exigencies of the moment and held no presentiment. Alas, Ananta's life did come to an early close. "Wisdom from the hermitage, I suppose. But I see you have left Benares." Ananta's eyes gleamed with satisfaction. He was yet hoping to secure my pinions in the family nest. "My sojourn in Benares was not in vain. I found there everything my heart had been longing for. You may be sure it was not your pundit or his son." Ananta joined me in reminiscent laughter. He had had to admit that the Benares clairvoyant he selected had proved a short-sighted one. "What are your plans, my wandering brother?" "Jitendra persuaded me to Agra. We shall view the beauties of the Taj Mahal here," I explained. "Then we are going to my newly found guru, who has a hermitage in Serampore." Ananta hospitably arranged for our comfort. Several times during the evening I noticed his eyes fixed on me reflectively. I know that look, I thought. A plot is brewing. The denouement took place during our early breakfast. "So, you feel quite independent of father's wealth?" Ananta's gaze was innocent as he resumed the barbs of yesterday's conversation. "I am conscious of my dependence on God." "Words are cheap. Life has shielded you thus far. What a plight if you were forced to look to the invisible hand for your food and shelter. You would soon be begging on the streets." "Never. I would not put faith in passers-by rather than in God. He can devise for his devotee 1,000 resources besides the begging bowl." "More rhetoric. Suppose I suggest that your vaunted philosophy be put to a test in this tangible world." "I would agree." "Do you confine God to a speculative world?" "We shall see. Today you shall have opportunity either to enlarge or to confirm my own views." Ananta paused for a dramatic moment, then spoke slowly and seriously. "I propose that I send you and your fellow disciple Jitendra this morning to the nearby city of Brindaban. You must not take a single rupee. You must not beg, either for food or money. You must not reveal your predicament to anyone. You must not go without your meals. And you must not be stranded in Brindaban. If you return to my bungalow here before 12 o'clock tonight without having broken any rule of the test, I shall be the most astonished man in Agra. I accept the challenge. No hesitation was in my words or in my heart. Grateful memories flashed of the instant beneficence, my healing of deadly cholera through an appeal to Lahiri Mahashai's picture, the playful gift of the 2 kites on the Lahore roof, the opportune amulet amidst my discouragement in Bareilly, the decisive message through the sadhu outside the courtyard of the Pandit's house in Benares, the vision of Divine Mother and her majestic words of love, her swift heed through Master Mahashai to my trifling embarrassments, the last-minute guidance that had materialized my high school diploma, and the ultimate boon, my living master from the mist of my lifelong dreams. Never would I admit my philosophy unequal to any tussle on the world's harsh proving grounds. Your willingness does you credit. I'll escort you to the train at once, Ananta said. He turned to the open-mouthed Jitendra. You must go along, as a witness and very likely a fellow victim. Half an hour later, Jitendra and I were in possession of one-way tickets for the trip. We submitted, in a secluded corner of the station, to a search of our persons. Ananta was quickly satisfied that we were carrying no hidden hoard. Our simple dhotis concealed nothing more than was necessary. As faith invaded the serious realms of finance, my friend spoke protestingly. Ananta, give me 1 or 2 rupees as a safeguard, then I can telegraph you in case of misfortune. Jitendra! My ejaculation was sharply reproachful. I will not proceed with the test if you take any money as final security. There is something reassuring about the chink of coins, Jitendra said no more, as I regarded him sternly. Mukunda, I am not heartless. A hint of humility had crept into Ananta's voice. It may be that his conscience was smiting him, perhaps for sending 2 penniless boys to a strange city, perhaps for his own religious skepticism. If by any chance or grace you pass successfully through the Brindaban ordeal, I shall ask you to initiate me as your disciple. This promise had a certain irregularity, in keeping with the unconventional occasion. The eldest brother in an Indian family seldom bows before his juniors. He receives respect and obedience second only to a father. But no time remained for my comment. Our train was at point of departure. Jitendra maintained a lugubrious silence as the train covered the miles. Finally he bestirred himself. Leaning over, he pinched me painfully on a tender spot. I see no sign that God is going to supply our next meal. Be quiet, doubting Thomas. The Lord is working with us. Can you also arrange that he hurry? Already I am famished, merely at the prospect before us. I left Benares to view the Taj Mausoleum, not to enter my own. Cheer up, Jitendra. Are we not to have our first glimpse of the sacred wonders of Brindaban? I am in deep joy at the thought of treading the ground hallowed by the feet of Lord Krishna. The door of our compartment opened. 2 men seated themselves. The next train stop would be the last. Young lads, do you have friends in Brindaban? The stranger opposite me was taking a surprising interest. None of your business. Rudely, I averted my gaze. You are probably flying away from your families, under the enchantment of the Stealer of Hearts. I am of devotional temperament myself. I will make it my positive duty to see that you receive food and shelter from this overpowering heat. No, sir, let us alone, you're very kind, but you're mistaken in judging us to be truants from home. No further conversation ensued. The train came to a halt. As Jitendra and I descended to the platform, our chance companions linked arms with us and summoned a horse cab. We alit before a stately hermitage, set amidst the evergreen trees of well-kept grounds. Our benefactors were evidently known here. A smiling lad led us without comment to a parlour. We were soon joined by an elderly woman of dignified bearing. "Gauri Ma, the princess could not come," one of the men addressed the ashram hostess. "At the last moment their plans went awry. They send deep regrets. But we have brought 2 other guests. As soon as we met them on the train, I felt drawn to them as devotees of Lord Krishna. Goodbye, young friends." Our 2 acquaintances walked to the door. "We shall meet again, if God be willing." "You are welcome here." Gauri Ma smiled in motherly fashion. "You could not have come on a better day. I was expecting 2 royal patrons of this hermitage. What a shame if my cooking had found none to appreciate it." The pleasant words had a surprising effect on Jitendra. He burst into tears. The prospect he had feared in Brindaban was turning out as royal entertainment. His sudden mental adjustment proved too much for him. Our hostess looked at him with curiosity, but without remark. Perhaps she was familiar with adolescent quirks. Lunch was announced. Gauri Ma led the way to a dining patio, spicy with savoury odours. She vanished into an adjoining kitchen. I had been premeditating this moment. Selecting the appropriate spot on Jitendra's body, I gave him a pinch as painful as the one he'd given me on the train. Doubting Thomas? The Lord works in a hurry too. The hostess re-entered with a punkah. She steadily fanned us in the oriental fashion as we squatted on ornate blanket seats. Ashram disciples passed to and fro with some 30 courses. Rather than meal, the description may only be sumptuous repast. Since arriving on this planet, Jitendra and I had never before tasted such delicacies. Dishes fit for princes indeed, honoured mother. What your royal patrons could have found more urgent than attending this banquet, I cannot imagine. You have given us a memory for a lifetime. Silenced as we were by Ananta's requirement, we could not explain to the gracious lady that our thanks held a double significance. Our sincerity at least was patent. We departed with her blessing and an attractive invitation to revisit the hermitage. The heat outdoors was merciless. My friend and I made for the shelter of a lordly kadamba tree at the ashram gate. Sharp words followed. Once again, Jitendra was beset with misgivings. "A fine mess you've got me into. Our luncheon was only accidental good fortune. How can we see the sights of this city without a single paisa between us? And how on earth are you going to take me back to Ananta's place? You forget God quickly, now that your stomach is filled. My words, not bitter, were accusatory. How short is human memory for divine favours? No man lives who has not seen some of his prayers granted. I'm not likely to forget my folly in venturing out with a madcap like you. Be quiet, Jitendra. The same Lord who fed us will show us Brindaban and return us to Agra." A slight young man of pleasing countenance approached at rapid pace. Halting under our tree, he bowed before me. "Dear friend, you and your companion must be strangers here. Permit me to be your host and guide." It is scarcely possible for an Indian to pale, but Jitendra's face was suddenly sickly. I politely declined the offer. "You are surely not banishing me?" The stranger's alarm would have been comic in any other circumstances. "Why not?" "You are my guru." His eyes sought mine trustfully. "During my midday devotions, the blessed Lord Krishna appeared in a vision. He showed me 2 forsaken figures under this very tree. One face was yours, my master. Often have I seen it in meditation. What joy if you accept my humble services. I too am glad you have found me. Neither God nor man has forsaken us." Though I was motionless, smiling at the eager face before me, an inward obeisance cast me at the divine feet. "Dear friends, will you not honour my home with a visit?" "You are kind, but the plan is unfeasible. Already we are guests of my brother in Agra." "At least give me memories of touring Brindaban with you." I gladly consented. The young man, who said his name was Pratap Chatterjee, hailed a horse carriage. We visited Madana Mohana temple and the other Krishna shrines. Night descended before we had finished our temple devotions. Excuse me while I get sandesh, an Indian sweetmeat. Pratap entered a shop near the railway station. Jitendra and I sauntered along the wide street, crowded now in the comparative coolness. Our friend was absent for some time, but finally returned with gifts of many sweetmeats. Please allow me to gain this religious merit. Pratap smiled pleadingly as he held out a bundle of rupee notes and 2 tickets, just purchased to Agra. The reverence of my acceptance was for the invisible hand. Scoffed at by Ananta, had its bounty not far exceeded necessity. We sought out a secluded spot near the station. Pratap, I will instruct you in the Kriya of Lahiri Mahashai, the greatest yogi of modern times. His technique will be your guru. The initiation was concluded in half an hour. Kriya is your Chintamani, I told the new student. The technique, which, as you see, is simple, embodies the art of quickening man's spiritual evolution. Hindu scriptures teach that the incarnating ego requires 1,000,000 years to obtain liberation from Maya. This natural period is greatly shortened through Kriya Yoga. Just as plant growth can be accelerated far beyond its normal rate, as Jagadish Chandra Bose has demonstrated, so man's psychological development also can be speeded by scientific means. Be faithful in your practice. You will approach the Guru of all gurus. I am transported to find this yogic key long sought, Pratap spoke thoughtfully. Its unshackling effect on my sensory bonds will free me for higher spheres. The vision today of Lord Krishna could only mean my highest good. We sat a while in silent understanding, then walked slowly to the station. Joy was within me as I boarded the train, but this was Jitendra's day for tears. My affectionate farewell to Pratap had been punctuated by stifled sobs from both my companions. The journey once more found Jitendra in a welter of grief. Not for himself this time, but against himself. How shallow my trust! My heart has been stone. Never in future shall I doubt God's protection. Midnight was approaching. The 2 Cinderellas, sent forth penniless, entered Ananta's bedroom. Just as he had lightly predicted, his face was a study in astonishment. Silently, I showered a table with rupee notes. Jitendra, the truth. Ananta's tone was jocular. Has not this youngster been staging a hold-up? But as the tale was unfolded, my brother turned sober, then solemn. The law of demand and supply reaches into subtler realms than I had supposed. Ananta spoke with a spiritual enthusiasm never before noticeable. I understand for the first time your indifference to the vaults and vulgar accumulations of the world. Late as it was, my brother insisted that he receive Diksha into Kriya Yoga. The Guru, Mukunda, had to shoulder in one night the responsibility of 2 unsought disciples. Breakfast on the following day was eaten in a harmony that had been absent on the preceding morning. I smiled at Jitendra. You shall not be cheated of the Taj. Let us view it before starting for Serampore. Bidding farewell to Ananta, my friend and I were soon before the glory of Agra, the Taj Mahal. White marble, dazzling in the sun, it stands a vision of pure symmetry. The perfect setting is dark cypress, glossy lawn, and tranquil lagoon. The interior is exquisite, with lace-like carvings inlaid with semi-precious stones. Delicate wreaths and scrolls emerge intricately from marbles, brown and violet. Illumination from the dome falls on the cenotaphs of Emperor Shah Jahan and Mumtaz-e Mahal, queen of his realm, and his heart. Enough of sightseeing. I was longing for my Guru. Jitendra and I were shortly travelling south by train toward Bengal. Mukunda, I've not seen my family for months. I've changed my mind. Perhaps later I shall visit your master in Serampore. My friend, who may mildly be described as vacillating in temperament, left me in Calcutta. By local train, I soon reached Serampore, 12 miles to the north. A throb of wonderment stole over me as I realized that 28 days had elapsed since the Banaras meeting with my Guru. You will come to me in 4 weeks. Here I was, heart pounding, standing within his courtyard on quiet Raigat Lane. I entered for the first time the hermitage where I was to spend the best part of the next 10 years with India's Gyan Avatar, incarnation of wisdom. Chapter 12. Years in my Master's Hermitage. You have come. Sri Yukteswar greeted me from a tiger skin on the floor of a balconied sitting room. His voice was cold, his manner unemotional. Yes, dear Master, I'm here to follow you. Kneeling, I touched his feet. How can that be? You ignore my wishes. No longer, Guruji. Your wish shall be my law. That's better. Now I can assume responsibility for your life. I willingly transfer the burden, Master. My first request, then, is that you return home to your family. I want you to enter college in Calcutta. Your education should be continued. Very well, sir. I hid my consternation. Would importunate books pursue me down the years? First father, now Sri Yukteswar. Some day you will go to the West. Its people will be more receptive to India's ancient wisdom if the strange Hindu teacher has a university degree. You know best, Guruji. My gloom departed. The reference to the West I found puzzling, remote, but my opportunity to please Master by obedience was vitally immediate. You'll be near in Calcutta. Come here whenever you find time. Every day if possible, Master. Gratefully, I accept your authority in every detail of my life. On one condition. Yes? That you promise to reveal God to me. An hour-long verbal tussle ensued. A master's word cannot be falsified. It is not lightly given. The implications in the pledge open out vast metaphysical vistas. A guru must be on intimate terms, indeed, with the Creator before he can obligate him to appear. I sensed Sri Yukteswar's divine unity and was determined, as his disciple, to press my advantage. You are of exacting disposition. Then Master's consent rang out with compassionate finality. Let your wish be my wish. A lifelong shadow lifted from my heart. The vague search, hither and yon, was over. I had found eternal shelter in a true Guru. Come, I will show you the hermitage. Master rose from his tiger mat. In glancing about, I noticed on a wall a picture that was garlanded with a spray of jasmine. Lahiri Mahashai, I said in astonishment. Yes, my divine Guru. Sri Yukteswar's tone was reverently vibrant. Greater he was, as man and yogi, than any other teacher whose life came within the range of my investigations. Silently I bowed before the familiar picture. Soul homage sped to the peerless Master who, blessing my infancy, had guided my steps to this hour. Led by my Guru, I strolled about the house and its grounds. Large, ancient and well-built, the massive pillared hermitage surrounded a courtyard. Outer walls were moss-covered. Pigeons fluttered over the flat grey roof, unceremoniously sharing the ashram quarters. A rear garden was pleasant with jackfruit, mango and plantain trees. Balustraded balconies of upper rooms in the 2-story building faced the courtyard from 3 sides. A spacious ground-floor hall, with high ceilings supported by colonnades, was used, Master said, chiefly during the annual festivities of Durga Puja. A narrow stairway led to Sri Yukteswar's sitting room, whose small balcony overlooked the street. The ashram was plainly furnished. Everything was simple, clean, and utilitarian. Several Western-style chairs, benches, and tables were in evidence. Master invited me to stay overnight. A supper of vegetable curry was served by 2 young disciples who were receiving hermitage training. "Guruji, please tell me something of your life." I was squatting on a straw mat near his tiger skin. The friendly stars were very close, it seemed, beyond the balcony. My family name was Priya Nath Karar. I was born here in Serampore, where father was a wealthy businessman. He left me this ancestral mansion, now my hermitage. My formal schooling was little. I found it slow and shallow. In early manhood, I undertook the responsibilities of a householder and have 1 daughter, now married. My middle life was blessed with the guidance of Lahiri Mahashai. After my wife died, I joined the Swami order and received the new name of Sri Yukteswar Giri. Such are my simple annals. Master smiled at my eager face. Like all biographical sketches, his words had given the outward facts without revealing the inner man. "Guruji, I would like to hear some stories of your childhood." "I will tell you a few, each one with a moral." Sri Yukteswar's eyes twinkled with his warning. "My mother once tried to frighten me with an appalling story of a ghost in a dark chamber. I went there immediately and expressed my disappointment at having missed the ghost. Mother never told me another horrid tale. Moral: look fear in the face and it will cease to trouble you. Another early memory is my wish for an ugly dog belonging to a neighbour. I kept my household in turmoil for weeks to get that dog. My ears were deaf to offers of pets with more prepossessing appearance. Moral: attachment is blinding. It lends an imaginary halo of attractiveness to the object of desire. A third story concerns the plasticity of the youthful mind. I heard my mother remark occasionally, "A man who accepts a job under anyone is a slave." That impression became so indelibly fixed that even after my marriage I refused all positions. I met expenses by investing my family endowment in land. Moral: good and positive suggestions should instruct the sensitive ears of children. Their early ideas long remain sharply etched. Master fell into tranquil silence. Around midnight, he led me to a narrow cot. Sleep was sound and sweet the first night under my guru's roof. Sri Yukteswar chose the following morning to grant me his Kriya Yoga initiation. The technique I had already received from 2 disciples of Lahiri Mahashai, father and my tutor, Swami Kabbalananda. But Master possessed a transforming power. At his touch, a great light broke upon my being, like the glory of countless suns blazing together. A flood of ineffable bliss overwhelmed my heart to an innermost core. It was late in the afternoon of the following day before I could bring myself to leave the hermitage. "You will return in 30 days. As I entered the door of my Calcutta home, the fulfillment of Master's prediction entered with me. None of my relatives made the pointed remarks I'd feared about the reappearance of the soaring bird. I climbed to my little attic and bestowed affectionate glances as though on a living presence. You have witnessed my meditations and the tears and storms of my sadhana. Now I have reached the harbour of my divine teacher. Son, I am happy for us both. Father and I sat together in the evening calm. You have found your guru, as in miraculous fashion I once found my own. The holy hand of Lahiri Mahashai is guarding our lives. Your master has proved to be no inaccessible Himalayan saint, but one nearby. My prayers have been answered. In your search for God, you have not been permanently removed from my sight. Father was also pleased that my formal studies would be resumed. He made suitable arrangements. I was enrolled the following day at nearby Scottish Church College in Calcutta. Happy months sped by. My readers have doubtless made the perspicacious surmise that I was little seen in the college classrooms. The Serampore hermitage held a lure too irresistible. Master accepted my constant presence without comment. To my relief, he seldom referred to the halls of learning. Though it was plain to all that I was never cut out for a scholar, I managed to attain minimum passing grades from time to time. Daily life at the ashram flowed smoothly, infrequently varied. My guru awoke before dawn. Lying down or sometimes sitting on the bed, he entered a state of samadhi. It was simplicity itself to discover when Master had awakened. Abrupt halt of stupendous snores. A sigh or two, perhaps a bodily movement. Then a soundless state of breathlessness. He was in deep yogic joy. Breakfast did not follow. First came a long walk by the Ganges. Those morning strolls with my guru, how real and vivid still. In the easy resurrection of memory, I often find myself at his side. The early sun is warming the river. His voice rings out, rich with the authenticity of wisdom. A bath, then the midday meal. Its preparation according to Master's daily directions had been the careful task of young disciples. My guru was a vegetarian. Before embracing monkhood, however, he had eaten eggs and fish. His advice to students was to follow any simple diet which proved suited to one's constitution. Master ate little, often rice, coloured with turmeric or juice of beets or spinach and lightly sprinkled with buffalo ghee or melted butter. Another day he might have lentil dal or chana curry with vegetables. For dessert, mangoes or oranges with rice pudding or jackfruit juice. Visitors appeared in the afternoons. A steady stream poured from the world into the tranquil hermitage. My guru treated all guests with courtesy and kindness. A master, one who has realized himself as the omnipresent soul, not the body or the ego, perceives in all men a striking similarity. The impartiality of saints is rooted in wisdom. They are no longer influenced by the alternating faces of Maya, no longer subject to the likes and dislikes that confuse the judgment of unenlightened men. Sri Yukteswar showed no special consideration to those who were powerful, rich or accomplished. Neither did he slight others for their poverty or illiteracy. He would listen respectfully to words of truth from a child, and on occasion would openly ignore a conceited pundit. 8 o'clock was the supper hour, and sometimes found lingering guests. My guru would not excuse himself to eat alone. None left his ashram hungry or dissatisfied. Sri Yukteswar was never at a loss, never dismayed by unexpected visitors. Under his resourceful directions to the disciples, scanty food would emerge a banquet. Yet he was economical. His modest funds went far. Be comfortable within your purse, he often said. Extravagance will bring you discomfort. Whether in the details of hermitage entertainment, or of building and repair work, or of other practical concerns, Master manifested the originality of a creative spirit. Quiet evening hours often brought one of my guru's discourses, treasures against time. His every utterance was chiselled by wisdom. A sublime self-assurance marked his mode of expression. It was unique. He spoke as none other in my experience ever spoke. His thoughts were weighed in a delicate balance of discrimination before he permitted them the outward garb of speech. The essence of truth, all-pervasive, even with a physiological aspect, came from him like a fragrant exudation of the soul. I was conscious always that I was in the presence of a living manifestation of God. The weight of his divinity automatically bowed my head before him. If guests detected that Sri Yukteswar was becoming engrossed with the infinite, he quickly engaged them in conversation. He was incapable of striking a pose or of flaunting his inner withdrawal. Always one with the Lord, he needed no separate time for communion. A self-realized master has already left behind the stepping stone of meditation. The flower falls when the fruit appears. But saints often cling to spiritual forms in order to set an example for disciples. As midnight approached, my guru might fall into a doze with the naturalness of a child. There was no fuss about bedding. He often lay down without even a pillow on a narrow davenport, which was the background for his customary tiger-skin seat. A night-long philosophical discussion was not rare. Any disciple could summon it by intensity of interest. I felt no tiredness then, no desire for sleep. Master's living words were sufficient. "Oh, it is dawn. Let us walk by the Ganges." So ended many of my periods of nocturnal edification. My early months with Sri Yukteswar culminated in a useful lesson: how to outwit a mosquito. At home, my family always used protective curtains at night. I was dismayed to discover that in the Serampore hermitage, this prudent custom was honoured in the breach. Yet the insects were in full residence. I was bitten from head to foot. My guru took pity on me. "Buy yourself a curtain, and also one for me," he laughed and added. "If you buy only one for yourself, all mosquitoes will concentrate on me." I was more than thankful to comply. On every night that I spent in Serampore, my guru would ask me to arrange the bedtime curtains. One night, when a cloud of mosquitoes surrounded us, Master failed to issue his usual instructions. I listened nervously to the anticipatory hum of the insects. Getting into bed, I threw a propitiatory prayer in their general direction. A half-hour later, I coughed pretentiously to attract my guru's attention. I thought I would go mad with the bites, and especially the singing drone as the mosquitoes celebrated bloodthirsty rites. No responsive stir from Master. I approached him cautiously. He was not breathing. This was my first close observation of him in the yogic trance. It filled me with fright. His heart must have failed. I placed a mirror under his nose. No breath vapour appeared. To make doubly certain, for minutes I closed his mouth and nostrils with my fingers. His body was cold and motionless. In a daze, I turned towards the door to summon help. "So, a budding experimentalist. My poor nose." Master's voice was shaky with laughter. "Why don't you go to bed? Is the whole world going to change for you? Change yourself. Be rid of the mosquito consciousness." Meekly I returned to bed. Not one insect ventured near. I realized that my guru had previously agreed to the curtains only to please me. He had had no fear of mosquitoes. By yogic power he could prevent them from biting him, or if he chose, he could escape to an inner invulnerability. He was giving me a demonstration, I thought. That is the yogic state I must strive to attain. A true yogi is able to pass into and maintain the superconscious state, regardless of multitudinous distractions never absent from this earth, the buzz of insects, the pervasive glare of daylight. In the first state of samadhi, sabikalpa, the devotee shuts off all sensory testimony of the outer world. He is rewarded then by sounds and scenes of inner realms fairer than the pristine Eden. The instructive mosquitoes served for another early lesson in the ashram. It was the gentle hour of dusk. My guru was matchlessly interpreting the ancient texts. At his feet, I was in perfect peace. A rude mosquito entered the idyll and competed for my attention. As it dug a poisonous hypodermic needle into my thigh, I automatically raised an avenging hand. Reprieve from impending execution. An opportune memory had come to me of Patanjali's aphorism on ahimsa, harmlessness. In the presence of a man perfected in ahimsa, non-violence, enmity in any creature does not arise. Why didn't you finish the job? Master, do you advocate taking life? No, but in your mind, you had already struck the death blow. I don't understand. By ahimsa, Patanjali meant removal of the desire to kill. Sri Yukteswar had found my mental processes an open book. This world is inconveniently arranged for a literal practice of ahimsa. Man may be compelled to exterminate harmful creatures. He is not under a similar compulsion to feel anger or animosity. All forms of life have an equal right to the air of Maya. The saint who uncovers the secret of creation will be in harmony with nature's countless bewildering expressions. All men may understand this truth by overcoming the passion for destruction. Guruji, should one offer himself a sacrifice rather than kill a wild beast? No. Man's body is precious. It has the highest evolutionary value because of unique brain and spinal centers. These enable the advanced devotee fully to grasp and express the loftiest aspects of divinity. No lower form is so equipped. It is true that a man incurs the debt of a minor sin if he is forced to kill an animal or any other living thing. But the holy Shastras teach that wanton loss of a human body is a serious transgression against the karmic law. I sighed in relief. Scriptural reinforcement of one's natural instincts is not always forthcoming. Master, so far as I know, was never at close quarters with a leopard or a tiger. But a deadly cobra once confronted him, only to be conquered by his love. The encounter took place in Puri, where my guru had a seaside hermitage. Prafulla, a young disciple of Sri Yukteswar's later years, was with Master on this occasion. We were seated outdoors near the ashram, Prafulla told me. A cobra appeared nearby, a 4-foot length of sheer terror. Its hood was angrily expanded as it raced towards us. Master gave a welcoming chuckle, as though to a child. I was filled with consternation to see Sri Yukteswarji engage in a rhythmical clapping of hands. He was entertaining the dread visitor. I remained completely quiet, inwardly ejaculating fervent prayers. The serpent, very close to Master, was now motionless, seemingly magnetized by his caressing attitude. The frightful hood gradually contracted. The snake slithered between Sri Yukteswarji's feet and disappeared into the bushes. Why Master would move his hands and why the cobra would not strike them were inexplicable to me then, Prafulla concluded. I have since come to realize that our divine Guru is beyond fear of hurt from any creature. One afternoon, during my early months at the ashram, I found Sri Yukteswar's eyes fixed on me piercingly. "You are too thin, Mukunda." His remark struck a sensitive point. My sunken eyes and emaciated appearance were not to my liking. Chronic dyspepsia had afflicted me since childhood. Many bottles of tonic stood on a shelf in my room at home. None had helped me. Occasionally, I would sadly ask myself if life were worthwhile with a body so unsound. Medicines have limitations. The divine creative life force has none. Believe that, you shall be well and strong. Master's words instantly convinced me that I could successfully apply their truth in my own life. No other healer, and I had tried many, had been able to arouse in me such profound faith. Day by day, I waxed in health and strength. Through Sri Yukteswar's hidden blessing, in 2 weeks, I gained the weight that I had vainly sought in the past. My stomach ailments vanished permanently. On later occasions, I was privileged to witness my Guru's divine healings of persons suffering from diabetes, epilepsy, tuberculosis, or paralysis. Years ago, I too was anxious to put on weight. Master told me shortly after he'd healed me. During convalescence, after a severe illness, I visited Lahiri Mahashai in Benares. "Sir," I said, "I've been very sick and have lost many pounds." "I see, Yukteswar, you made yourself unwell, and now you think you are thin." This reply was far from the one I had expected. My Guru, however, added encouragingly, "Let me see. I am sure you ought to feel better tomorrow." My receptive mind accepted his words as a hint that he was secretly healing me. The next morning I sought him out and exclaimed exultingly, "Sir, I feel much better today." "Indeed, today you invigorate yourself." "No, Master," I protested, "it is you who've helped me. This is the first time in weeks that I've had any energy." "Oh yes, your malady has been quite serious. Your body is frail yet. Who can say how it will be tomorrow?" The thought of a possible return of my weakness brought me a shudder of cold fear. The following morning I could hardly drag myself to Lahiri Mahasya's home. "Sir, I'm ailing again." My guru's glance was quizzical. "So? Once more you indispose yourself." My patience was exhausted. "Guru Deva," I said, "I realize now that day by day you have been ridiculing me. I don't understand why you disbelieve my truthful reports. Really, it has been your thoughts that have made you feel alternately weak and strong." My guru looked at me affectionately. "You have seen how your health has exactly followed your subconscious expectations. Thought is a force, even as electricity or gravitation. The human mind is a spark of the almighty consciousness of God. I could show you that whatever your powerful mind believes very intensely would instantly come to pass." Knowing that Lahiri Mahasaya never spoke idly, I addressed him with great awe and gratitude. "Master, if I think that I am well, and that I have regained my former weight, shall those things come to pass?" "It is so, even at this moment." My guru spoke gravely. His gaze concentrated on my eyes. I instantly felt an increase not only of strength, but of weight. Lahiri Mahasaya retreated into silence. After a few hours at his feet, I returned to my mother's house, where I stayed during my visit to Benares. "My son, what is the matter? Are you swelling with dropsy?" Mother could hardly believe her eyes. My body was now as full and robust as it had been before my illness. I weighed myself and found that in one day I had gained 50 pounds. They have remained permanently. Friends and acquaintances who had seen my thin figure were overcome with amazement. A number of them changed their mode of life and became disciples of Lahiri Mahasaya as a result of this miracle. My guru, awake in God, knew this world to be nothing but an objectivized dream of the Creator. Because he was completely aware of his unity with the Divine Dreamer, Lahiri Mahasaya could materialize or dematerialize or make any other change he wished in the dream atoms of the phenomenal world. All creation is governed by law, Sri Yukteswar concluded. The principles that operate in the outer universe, discoverable by scientists, are called natural laws, but there are subtler laws that rule the hidden spiritual planes and the inner realm of consciousness. These principles are knowable through the science of yoga. It is not the physicist, but the self-realized master who comprehends the true nature of matter. By such knowledge, Christ was able to restore the servant's ear after it had been severed by one of the disciples. My guru was a peerless interpreter of the scriptures. Many of my happiest memories are centered in his discourses, but his jeweled thoughts were not cast into the ashes of heedlessness or stupidity. One restless movement of my body, or my slight lapse into absent-mindedness, would suffice to put an abrupt period to my master's exposition. "You are not here." Sri Yukteswar interrupted himself one afternoon with this observation. As usual, he was keeping relentless track of my attention. "Guruji," my tone was a protest, "I have not stirred. My eyelids have not moved. I can repeat each word you have uttered. Nevertheless, you are not fully with me. Your objection forces me to remark that in your mental background you were creating 3 institutions. One was a sylvan retreat on a plain, another on a hilltop, still another by the ocean. Those vaguely formulated thoughts had indeed been present almost subconsciously. I glanced at him apologetically. What can I do with such a master, one who penetrates my random musings? You have given me that right. The subtle truths I am expounding cannot be grasped without your complete concentration. Unless necessary, I do not invade the seclusion of others' minds. Man has the natural privilege of roaming secretly among his thoughts. The unbidden Lord does not enter there, neither do I venture intrusion. You are ever welcome, Master. Your architectural dreams will materialize later. Now is the time for study." Thus, incidentally, in his simple way, my Guru revealed his knowledge of the coming of 3 important events in my life. Since early youth, I had had enigmatic glimpses of 3 buildings, each in a different setting. In the exact sequence Sri Yukteswar had indicated, these visions took ultimate form. First came my founding of a boys' yoga school on a plain in Ranchi, then an American headquarters on a Los Angeles hilltop, and then a hermitage in Encinitas, California, overlooking the vast Pacific. Master never arrogantly said, "I prophesy that such and such an event shall occur." He would rather hint, "Don't you think it may happen?" But his simple speech hid Vatic power. There was no recanting. Never did his slightly veiled predictions prove false. Sri Yukteswar was reserved and matter-of-fact in demeanour. There was naught of the vague or daft visionary about him. His feet were firm on the earth, his head in the haven of heaven. Practical people aroused his admiration. Saintliness is not dumbness. Divine perceptions are not incapacitating, he would say. The active expression of virtue gives rise to the keenest intelligence. My Guru was reluctant to discuss the superphysical realms. His only marvellous aura was that of perfect simplicity. In conversation he avoided startling references. In action he was freely expressive. Many teachers talked of miracles, but could manifest nothing. Sri Yukteswar seldom mentioned the subtle laws, but secretly operated them at will. A man of realization does not perform any miracle until he receives an inward sanction, Master explained. God does not wish the secrets of his creation revealed promiscuously. Also, every individual in the world has an inalienable right to his free will. A saint will not encroach on that independence. The silence, habitual to Sri Yukteswar, was caused by his deep perceptions of the infinite. No time remained for the interminable revelations that occupy the days of teachers without self-realization. A saying from the Hindu scriptures is, "In shallow men, the fish of little thoughts cause much commotion. In oceanic minds, the whales of inspiration hardly make a ruffle." Because of my Guru's unspectacular guise, only a few of his contemporaries recognized him as a superman. The adage, "He is a fool that cannot conceal his wisdom," could never be applied to my profound and quiet master. Though born a mortal like all others, Sri Yukteswar achieved identity with the ruler of time and space. Master found no insuperable obstacle to the mergence of human and divine. No such barrier exists, I came to understand, save in man's spiritual unadventurousness. I always thrilled at the touch of Sri Yukteswar's holy feet. A disciple is spiritually magnetized by reverent contact with a master. A subtle current is generated. The devotee's undesirable habit mechanisms in the brain are often as if cauterized. The grooves of his worldly tendencies are beneficially disturbed. Momentarily, at least, he may find the secret veils of Maya lifting and glimpse the reality of bliss. My whole body responded with a liberating glow whenever I knelt in the Indian fashion before my Guru. Even when Lahiri Mahashai was silent, Master told me, or when he conversed on other than strictly religious topics, I discovered that nonetheless he had transmitted to me ineffable knowledge. Sri Yukteswar affected me similarly. If I entered the hermitage in a worried or indifferent frame of mind, my attitude imperceptibly changed. A healing calm descended at the mere sight of my Guru. Each day with him was a new experience in joy, peace, and wisdom. Never did I find him deluded or emotionally intoxicated with greed, anger, or human attachment. The darkness of Maya is silently approaching. Let us hie homeward within. With these cautionary words, Master constantly reminded his disciples of their need for Kriya Yoga. A new student occasionally expressed doubts regarding his own worthiness to engage in yoga practice. "Forget the past," Sri Yukteswar would console him. "The vanished lives of all men are dark, with many shames. Human conduct is ever unreliable until man is anchored in the divine. Everything in future will improve if you are making a spiritual effort now." Master always had young chelas, disciples, in his ashram. Their intellectual and spiritual education was his lifelong interest. Even shortly before he passed on, he accepted as hermitage residents 2 6-year-old boys and a youth of 16. All those in his charge were carefully trained. Disciple and discipline are etymologically and practically related. The ashram residents loved and revered their guru. A slight clap of his hand sufficed to bring them eagerly to his side. When his mood was silent and withdrawn, no one ventured to speak. When his laugh rang jovially, children looked upon him as their own. Sri Yukteswar seldom asked others to render him a personal service, nor would he accept a chela's help unless it was offered cheerfully. Master himself would wash his clothes if the disciples forgot the privileged task. His usual garment was the traditional ochre-coloured Swami robe. For indoor use, he wore laceless shoes that had been made in accordance with yogi custom of tiger or deerskin. Sri Yukteswar spoke fluent English, French, Bengali and Hindi. His Sanskrit was fair. He patiently instructed his young disciples by certain shortcuts that he had ingeniously devised for the study of English and Sanskrit. Master was not solicitously attached to his body, but he was cautious of it. The divine, he pointed out, is properly manifested through physical and mental soundness. He discountenanced all extremes. To a disciple who wanted to fast for a long period, my guru said laughingly, "Why not throw the dog a bone?" Sri Yukteswar's health was excellent. I never saw him unwell. To show respect for a worldly custom, he permitted his students, if they wished, to consult doctors. Physicians, he said, should carry on their work of healing through God's laws as applied to matter. But he extolled the superiority of mental therapy and often repeated, "Wisdom is the greatest cleanser." He told his chelas, "The body is a treacherous friend. Give it its due, no more. Pain and pleasure are transitory. Endure all dualities with calmness, trying at the same time to remove yourself beyond their power. Imagination is the door through which disease as well as healing enters. Disbelieve in the reality of sickness even when you are ill. An unrecognized visitor will flee." Master numbered many doctors among his disciples. Those who have studied physiology should go further and investigate the science of the soul, he told them. A subtle spiritual structure is hidden just behind the bodily mechanism. Sri Yukteswar counseled his students to be living liaisons of Western and Eastern virtues. Himself an executive Occidental in outer habits, inwardly he was the spiritual Oriental. He praised the progressive, resourceful and hygienic ways of the West and the religious ideals that gave a centuried halo to the East. Discipline had not been unknown to me. At home, father was strict, Ananta often severe. But Sri Yukteswar's training may not be described as other than drastic. A perfectionist, my guru was hypercritical of his disciples, whether in matters of moment or in the subtle nuances of ordinary behavior. Good manners without sincerity are like a beautiful dead lady, he remarked on suitable occasion. Straightforwardness without civility is like a surgeon's knife, effective but unpleasant. Candour with courtesy is helpful and admirable. Master was apparently satisfied with my spiritual progress, for he seldom referred to it. In other matters my ears were no strangers to reproof. My chief offences were absent-mindedness, intermittent indulgence in sad moods, non-observance of certain rules of etiquette, and occasional unmethodical ways. Observe how the activities of your father, Bhagavati, are well organized and well balanced, my guru pointed out. The two disciples of Lahiri Mahashai had met soon after my first visit to the Serampore hermitage. Father and master deeply admired each other. Both had built a beautiful inner life on foundations of spiritual granite, insoluble against the ages. From a transient teacher of my earlier life, I had imbibed a few erroneous lessons. A chella, I had been told, need not concern himself strenuously with worldly duties. When I had neglected or carelessly performed my tasks, I had not been chastised. Human nature finds such instruction very easy of assimilation. Under Master's unsparing rod, however, I soon recovered from the agreeable delusions of irresponsibility. Those who are too good for this world are adorning some other, Sri Yukteswar remarked one day. So long as you breathe the free air of earth, you are under obligation to render grateful service. Only he who has fully mastered the breathless state is freed from cosmic imperatives. He added dryly, I shall not fail to let you know when you have attained the final perfection. My guru could not be bribed, even by love. He showed no leniency to anyone who, like myself, had willingly offered to become a disciple. Whether Master and I were surrounded by his students or by strangers, or were alone together, he always spoke plainly and upbraided sharply. No trifling lapse into shallowness or inconsistency escaped his rebuke. This flattening to the ego treatment was hard to endure, but my unchangeable resolve was to allow Sri Yukteswar to iron out all of my psychological kinks. As he laboured at this titanic transformation, I shook many times under the weight of his disciplinary hammer. If you don't like my words, you are at liberty to leave at any time, Master assured me. I want nothing from you but your own improvement. Stay, only if you feel benefited. I am immeasurably grateful for the humbling blows he dealt my vanity. I sometimes felt that, metaphorically, he was discovering and uprooting every diseased tooth in my jaw. The hard core of egotism is difficult to dislodge except rudely. With its departure, the divine finds at last an unobstructed channel. In vain it seeks to percolate through flinty hearts of selfishness. Sri Yukteswar's intuition was penetrating. Heedless of remarks, he often replied to one's unexpressed thoughts. The words a person uses and the actual thoughts behind them may be poles apart. By calmness, my guru said, try to feel the thoughts behind the confusion of men's verbiage. The disclosures of divine insight are often painful to worldly ears. Master was not popular with superficial students. The wise, always few in number, deeply revered him. I dare say Sri Yukteswar would have been the most sought-after guru in India had his speech not been so candid and so censorious. I am hard on those who come for my training, he admitted to me. That is my way. Take it or leave it. I never compromise. But you will be much kinder to your disciples. That is your way. I try to purify only in fires of severity. These are searing beyond the average toleration. The gentle approach of love is also transfiguring. The inflexible and the yielding methods are equally effective if applied with wisdom. He added, you will go to foreign lands, where blunt assaults on the ego are not appreciated. A teacher could not spread India's message in the West without an ample fund of accommodative patience and forbearance. I refuse to say how often in America I have remembered Master's words. Though my guru's undissembling speech prevented a large following during his years on earth, nevertheless, through an ever-growing number of sincere students of his teachings, his spirit lives on in the world today. Warriors like Alexander the Great seek sovereignty over the soil. Masters like Sri Yukteswar win a farther dominion in men's souls. It was Master's practice to point out the simple, negligible shortcomings of his disciples with an air of portentous gravity. One day, My father visited Serampore to pay his respects to Sri Yukteswar. My parent expected very likely to hear some words in my praise. He was shocked to be given a long account of my imperfections. He rushed to see me. From your guru's remarks, I thought to find you a complete wreck. My parent was between tears and laughter. The only cause of Sri Yukteswar's displeasure at the time was that I had been trying, against his gentle hint, to convert a certain man to the spiritual path. With indignant speed, I sought out my guru. He received me with downcast eyes, as though conscious of guilt. It was the only time I ever saw the divine lion meek before me. The unique moment was savoured to the full. Sir, why did you judge me so mercilessly before my astounded father? Was that just? I will not do it again. Sri Yukteswar's tone was apologetic. Instantly, I was disarmed. How readily had the great man admitted a fault. Though he never again upset father's peace of mind, Master relentlessly continued to dissect me whenever and wherever he chose. New disciples often joined Sri Yukteswar in exhaustive criticism of others. Wise like the Guru, models of flawless discrimination, but he who takes the offensive should not be defenseless. The carping students themselves fled precipitately as soon as Master publicly unloosed in their direction a few shafts from his analytical quiver. Tender inner weaknesses, revolting at mild touches of censure, are like diseased parts of the body, recoiling before even delicate handling. This was Sri Yukteswar's amused comment on the flighty ones. Many disciples have a preconceived image of a guru, by which they judge his words and actions. Such persons often complained that they did not understand Sri Yukteswar. "Neither do you understand God," I retorted on one occasion. "If a saint were clear to you, you would be one." Among the trillion mysteries, breathing every second the inexplicable air, may one venture to ask that the fathomless nature of a master be instantly grasped? Students came, and generally went. Those who craved an easy path, that of instant sympathy and comforting recognitions of one's merits, did not find it at the Hermitage. Master offered his disciples shelter and shepherding for the eons, but many students miserly demanded ego balm as well. They departed, preferring before any humility life's countless humiliations. Sri Yukteswar's blazing rays, the open penetrating sunshine of his wisdom, were too powerful for their spiritual sickness. They sought out some lesser teacher who, shading them with flattery, permitted the fitful sleep of ignorance. During my early months with Master, I experienced a sensitive fear of his reprimands. I soon saw that his verbal vivisections were performed only on persons who, like myself, had asked him to discipline them. If any writhing student made a protest, Sri Yukteswar, unoffended, would fall into silence. His words were never wrathful, but impersonal with wisdom. Master's rebukes were not aimed at casual visitors. He seldom remarked on their defects, even if conspicuous. But towards students who sought his counsel, Sri Yukteswar felt a serious responsibility. Brave indeed is the Guru who undertakes to transform the crude ore of ego-permeated humanity. A saint's courage is rooted in his compassion for Maya-bewildered men, the stumbling eyeless of the world. After I had abandoned underlying resentment, I found a marked decrease in my chastisement. In a very subtle way, Master melted into comparative clemency. In time, I demolished every wall of rationalization and subconscious reservation behind which the human personality generally shielded itself. The reward was an effortless harmony with my Guru. I discovered him then to be trusting, considerate, and silently loving. Undemonstrative, however, he bestowed no word of affection. My own temperament is principally devotional. It was disconcerting at first to find that my Guru, saturated with jnana, wisdom, but seemingly dry of bhakti, devotion, expressed himself chiefly in terms of cold, spiritual mathematics. But as I attuned myself to his nature, I discovered no diminution, but rather an increase in my devotional approach to God. A self-realized master is fully able to guide his various disciples along the natural lines of their essential bias. My relationship with Sri Yukteswar was somewhat inarticulate, yet possessed a hidden eloquence. Often I found his silent signature on my thoughts, rendering speech inutile. Quietly sitting beside him, I would feel his bounty pouring peacefully over my being. Master's impartial justice was notably demonstrated during the summer vacation of my first college year. I had been looking forward to uninterrupted months in Serampore with my guru. You may be in charge of the hermitage. Sri Yukteswar was pleased over my enthusiastic arrival. Your duties will be the reception of guests and supervision of the work of the other disciples. Kumar, a young villager from East Bengal, was accepted a fortnight later for ashram training. Remarkably intelligent, he quickly won Master's affection. For some unfathomable reason, Sri Yukteswar adopted an uncritical attitude toward the new resident. Mukunda, let Kumar assume your duties. Employ your own time in sweeping and cooking. Master issued these instructions after the new boy had been with us for a month. Exalted to leadership, Kumar exercised a petty household tyranny. In silent mutiny, the other disciples continued to seek me out for daily counsel. This situation continued for 3 weeks. Then I overheard a conversation between Kumar and Master. Mukunda is impossible, the boy said. You made me supervisor, yet the others go to him and obey him. That's why I assigned him to the kitchen and you to the parlor. So you might come to realize that a worthy leader has the desire to serve, not to dominate. Sri Yukteswar's withering tones were new to Kumar. You wanted Mukunda's position, but could not maintain it by merit. Return now to your earlier work as cook's assistant. After this humbling incident, Master resumed toward Kumar a former attitude of unwanted indulgence. Who may solve the mystery of attraction? In Kumar, our Guru discovered a charming fount, one, however, that did not spurt for the fellow disciples. Though the new boy was obviously Sri Yukteswar's favourite, I felt no dismay. Personal idiosyncrasies, possessed even by masters, lend a rich complexity to the pattern of life. My nature is seldom commandeered by a detail. I was seeking from Sri Yukteswar a higher benefit than outward praise. Kumar spoke venomously to me one day, without reason. I was deeply hurt. Your head is swelling to the bursting point, I added a warning, whose truth I felt intuitively. Unless you mend your ways, some day you'll be asked to leave this ashram. Laughing sarcastically, Kumar repeated my remark to our Guru, who had just entered the room. Fully expecting to be scolded, I retired meekly to a corner. Maybe Mukunda is right. Master's reply to the boy came with unusual coldness. A year later, Kumar set out for a visit to his childhood home. He ignored the quiet disapproval of Sri Yukteswar, who never authoritatively controlled his disciples' movements. On the boy's return to Serampore in a few months, a change was unpleasantly apparent. Gone was the stately Kumar with the serenely glowing face. Only an undistinguished peasant stood before us, one who had lately acquired a number of evil habits. Master summoned me and broken-heartedly discussed the fact that the boy was now unsuited to the monastic hermitage life. Mukunda, I will leave it to you to instruct Kumar to leave the ashram tomorrow. I can't do it. Tears stood in Sri Yukteswar's eyes, but he controlled himself quickly. The boy would never have fallen to these depths had he listened to me and not gone away to mix with undesirable companions. He has rejected my protection. The callous world must be his guru still. Kumar's departure brought me no elation. Sadly, I wondered how one with the power to win a master's love could readily respond to worldly allures. Enjoyments of wine and sex are rooted in the natural man. To appreciate them one requires no delicacy of perception. Sense wiles are comparable to the evergreen oleander, fragrant, with its rosy-coloured flowers. Every part of the plant is poisonous. The land of healing lies within, radiant with the happiness that is blindly sought in 1,000 outer directions. Keen intelligence is two-edged, Master once remarked, in reference to Kumar's brilliant mind. It may be used constructively or destructively, like a knife, either to cut the boil of ignorance or to decapitate oneself. Intelligence is rightly guided only after the mind has acknowledged the inescapability of spiritual law. My Guru mixed freely with men and women disciples, treating all as his children. Perceiving their soul equality, he made no distinction and showed no partiality. In sleep, you do not know whether you are a man or a woman, he said. Just as a man, impersonating a woman, does not become one, so the soul, impersonating both man and woman, remains changeless. The soul is the immutable, unqualified image of God. Sri Yukteswar never avoided or blamed women as the cause of man's downfall. He pointed out that women, too, have to face temptation from the opposite sex. I once asked Master why a great ancient saint had called women the door to hell. A girl must have proved very troublesome to his peace of mind in his early life, my Guru answered caustically. Otherwise he would have denounced not woman, but some imperfection in his own self-control. If a visitor dared to relate a suggestive story in the hermitage, Master would maintain an unresponsive silence. Do not allow yourself to be thrashed by the provoking whip of a beautiful face, he told the disciples. How can sense slaves enjoy the world? Its subtle flavours escape them while they grovel in primal mud. All nice discriminations are lost to the man of elemental lusts. Students seeking to escape from the Maya-induced sex delusion received from Sri Yukteswar patient and understanding counsel. Just as hunger, not greed, has a legitimate purpose, so the sexual instinct has been implanted by nature solely for the propagation of the species, not for the kindling of insatiable longings, he said. Destroy wrong desires now, otherwise they will remain with you after the astral body has been separated from its physical casing. Even when the flesh is weak, the mind should be constantly resistant. If temptation assails you with cruel force, overcome it by impersonal analysis and indomitable will. Every natural passion can be mastered. Conserve your powers. Be like the capacious ocean, absorbing quietly all the tributary rivers of the senses. Daily renewed sense yearnings sap your inner peace. They're like openings in a reservoir that permit vital waters to be wasted in the desert soil of materialism. The forceful, activating impulse of wrong desire is the greatest enemy to the happiness of man. Roam in the world as a lion of self-control. Don't let the frogs of sense weakness kick you around. A true devotee is finally freed from all instinctive compulsions. He transforms his need for human affection into aspiration for God alone. A love solitary because omnipresent. Sri Yukteswar's mother lived in the Rama Mahal district of Banaras, where I had first visited my Guru. Gracious and kindly, she was yet a woman of very decided opinions. I stood on her balcony one day and watched mother and son talking together. In his quiet, sensible way, Master was trying to convince her about something. He was apparently unsuccessful, for she shook her head with great vigour. Nay, nay, my son, go away now. Your wise words are not for me. I'm not your disciple. Sri Yukteswar backed away without further argument, like a scolded child. I was touched, at his great respect for his mother, even in her unreasonable moods. She saw him only as her little boy, not as a sage. There was a charm about the trifling incident. It supplied a sidelight on my guru's unusual nature, inwardly humble and outwardly unbendable. The monastic regulations do not permit a Swami to retain connection with worldly ties after their formal severance. He may not perform the ceremonial family rites that are obligatory on the householder. Yet Shankara, reorganizer of the ancient Swami order, disregarded the injunctions. After the death of his beloved mother, he cremated her body with heavenly fire that he caused to spurt from his upraised hand. Sri Yukteswar also ignored the restrictions, in a fashion less spectacular. When his mother passed on, he arranged for crematory services by the holy Ganges in Benares and fed many Brahmins in conformance with householder customs. The Shastric prohibitions were intended to help Swamis to overcome narrow identifications. Shankara and Sri Yukteswar had wholly merged their being in the impersonal spirit. They needed no rescue by rule. Sometimes, too, a master purposely ignores a canon in order to uphold its principle as superior to and independent of form. Thus Jesus plucked ears of corn on the day of rest. To the inevitable critics he said, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. With the exception of the scriptures, Sri Yukteswar read little, yet he was invariably acquainted with the latest scientific discoveries and other advancements of knowledge. A brilliant conversationalist, he enjoyed an exchange of views on countless topics with his guests. My guru's ready wit and rollicking laugh enlivened every discussion. Often grave, Master was never gloomy. To seek the Lord, men need not disfigure their faces, he would say, quoting from the Bible. Remember that finding God will mean the funeral of all sorrows. Among the philosophers, professors, lawyers, and scientists who came to the hermitage, a number arrived for their first visit with the thought of meeting an orthodox religionist. Occasionally a supercilious smile or a glance of amused tolerance would betray that the newcomers expected nothing more than a few pious platitudes. After talking with Sri Yukteswar and discovering that he possessed precise insight into their specialized fields of knowledge, the visitors would depart reluctantly. My guru ordinarily was gentle and affable to guests. His welcome was given with charming cordiality. Yet inveterate egotists sometimes suffered an invigorating shock. They confronted in Master either a frigid indifference or a formidable opposition, ice or iron. A noted chemist once crossed swords with Sri Yukteswar. The visitor would not admit the existence of God, inasmuch as science had devised no means of detecting him. So you have inexplicably failed to isolate the supreme power in your test tubes. Master's gaze was stern. I recommend a new experiment. Examine your thoughts, unremittingly, for 24 hours. Then wonder no longer at God's absence. A celebrated scholar received a similar jolt. It came during his first visit to the ashram. The rafters resounded as the guest recited passages from the Mahabharata, Upanishads, and Bhashyas, commentaries of Shankara. I'm waiting to hear you. Sri Yukteswar's tone was inquiring, as though silence had reigned. The pundit was puzzled. Quotations there have been, in superabundance. Master's words convulsed me with mirth as I squatted in my corner at a respectful distance from the visitor. But what original commentary can you supply from the uniqueness of your particular life? What holy text have you absorbed and made your own? In what ways have these timeless truths renovated your nature? Are you content to be a hollow victrola, mechanically repeating the words of other men? I give up. The scholar's chagrin was comical. I have no inner realization. For the first time, perhaps, he understood that discerning placement of a comma does not atone for a spiritual coma. These bloodless pedants smell unduly of the lamp, my guru remarked, after the departure of the chastened one. They consider philosophy to be a gentle intellectual setting-up exercise. Their elevated thoughts are carefully unrelated either to the crudity of outward action or to any scourging inner discipline. Master stressed on other occasions the futility of mere book learning. Do not confuse understanding with a larger vocabulary, he remarked. Sacred writings are beneficial in stimulating desire for inward realization if one stanza at a time is slowly assimilated. Otherwise, continual intellectual study may result in vanity, false satisfaction, and undigested knowledge. Sri Yukteswar related one of his own experiences in scriptural edification. The scene was a forest hermitage in eastern Bengal, where he observed the procedure of a renowned teacher, Darbu Balav. His method, at once simple and difficult, was common in ancient India. Darbu Balav had gathered his disciples around him in the sylvan solitudes. The holy Bhagavad Gita was open before them. Steadfastly, they looked at one passage for half an hour, then closed their eyes. Another half hour slipped away. The master gave a brief comment. Motionless, they meditated again for an hour. Finally, the guru spoke. Do you now understand the stanza? Yes, sir. One in the group ventured this assertion. No, not fully. Seek the spiritual vitality that has given these words the power to rejuvenate India century after century. Another hour passed in silence. The master dismissed the students and turned to Sri Yukteswar. Do you know the Bhagavad Gita? No, sir, not really, though my eyes and mind have run through its pages many times. Hundreds have replied to me differently. The great sage smiled at Master in blessing. If one busies himself with an outer display of scriptural wealth, what time is left for silent inward diving after the priceless pearls? Sri Yukteswar directed the study of his own disciples by the same intensive method of one-pointedness. Wisdom is not assimilated with the eyes, but with the atoms, he said. When your conviction of a truth is not merely in your brain but in your being, you may diffidently vouch for its meaning. He discouraged any tendency a student might have to consider book knowledge a necessary step to spiritual realization. The rishis wrote in one sentence profundities that commentating scholars busy themselves over for generations, he said. Endless literary controversy is for sluggard minds. What more quickly liberating thought than God is? Nay, God. But man does not easily return to simplicity. It is seldom God for an intellectualist, but rather learned pomposities. His ego is pleased that he can grasp such erudition. Men who were pridefully conscious of their wealth or worldly position were likely, in Master's presence, to add humility to their other possessions. On one occasion, a local magistrate requested an interview at the seaside hermitage in Puri. The man, who was reputed to be ruthless, had it well within his power to dispossess us of the ashram. I mentioned this fact to my guru, but he seated himself with an uncompromising air and did not rise to greet the visitor. Slightly nervous, I squatted near the door. Sri Yukteswar failed to ask me to fetch a chair for the magistrate, who had to be content with a wooden box. There was no fulfillment of the man's obvious expectation that his importance would be ceremoniously acknowledged. A metaphysical discussion ensued. The guest blundered through misinterpretations of the scriptures. As his accuracy sank, his ire rose. "Do you know that I stood first in the MA examination?" Reason had forsaken him, but he could still shout. "Mr. Magistrate, you forget that this is not your courtroom," Master replied evenly. "From your childish remarks, one would surmise that your college career had been unremarkable. A university degree, in any case, is not related to Vedic realization. Saints are not produced in batches every semester like accountants." After a stunned silence, the visitor laughed heartily. "This is my first encounter with a heavenly magistrate," he said. Later, he made a formal request, couched in the legal terms that were evidently part and parcel of his being, to be accepted as a probationary disciple. On several occasions, Sri Yukteswar, like Lahiri Mahashai, discouraged unripe students who wished to join the Swami order. To wear the ochre robe when one lacks God realization is misleading to society, the two masters said. Forget the outward symbols of renunciation, which may injure you by inducing a false pride. Nothing matters except your steady, daily spiritual advancement. For that, use Kriya Yoga. In measuring the worth of a man, a saint employs an invariable criterion, one far different from the shifting yardsticks of the world. Humanity, so variegated in its own eyes, is seen by a master to be divided into only two classes: ignorant men who are not seeking God, and wise men who are. My guru personally attended to the details connected with the management of his property. Unscrupulous persons on various occasions attempted to secure possession of master's ancestral land. With determination and even by instigating lawsuits, Sri Yukteswar outwitted every opponent. He underwent these painful experiences from a desire never to be a begging guru or a burden on his disciples. His financial independence was one reason why my alarmingly outspoken master was innocent of the cunnings of diplomacy. Unlike teachers who have to flatter their supporters, my guru was impervious to the influences, open or subtle, of others' wealth. Never did I hear him ask or even hint for money for any purpose. His hermitage training was given free to all disciples. A court deputy arrived one day at the Serampore ashram to serve a legal summons. A disciple named Kanai and I ushered the man into Master's presence. The officer's attitude toward Sri Yukteswar was offensive. "It will do you good to leave the shadows of your hermitage and breathe the honest air of a courtroom," he said contemptuously. I could not contain myself. "Another word of your insolence and you will be on the floor." I advanced threateningly. Kanai also was shouting at the deputy, "You wretch, dare you bring your blasphemies into this sacred ashram?" But Master stood protectingly in front of his abuser. "Don't get excited over nothing. This man is only doing his rightful duty." The officer, dazed at his varying reception, respectfully offered a word of apology and sped away. Amazing it was to find that a master with such a fiery will could be so calm within. He fitted the Vedic definition of a man of God: softer than the flower where kindness is concerned, stronger than the thunder where principles are at stake. There are always those in this world who, in Browning's words, endure no light, being themselves obscure. Occasionally, an outsider, fevered over some imaginary grievance, will berate Sri Yukteswar. My imperturbable guru would listen politely, analyzing himself to see if any shred of truth lay within the denunciation. These scenes would bring to my mind one of Master's inimitable observations: some people try to be tall by cutting off the heads of others. The unfailing composure of a saint is impressive beyond any sermon. He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he that ruleth his spirit than he that taketh a city. Proverbs 16:32. I often reflected that my majestic master could easily have been an emperor or a world-shaking warrior had his mind been centered on fame or worldly achievement. He had chosen instead to storm those inner citadels of wrath and egotism, whose fall is the height of a man.